Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I present to you Joella Benson. Joella's team and her are committed to their clients and providing the highest quality service combined with offering the lowest rates available in your area, which is Texas. As your loan officer, she will work with you personally to ensure you get a mortgage loan that is tailored specifically to meet your needs. She's also dedicated to make one of the biggest purchases in your life an easy and seamless experience. Joella prioritizes to communicate efficiently and provide great customer service to better service her clients' best interest. Her ultimate goal is to create lasting relationships with each of her clients to continue providing excellent service for many years to come. Town Square Mortgage is a local mortgage lender where all the steps of your loan are done locally, which means better, faster, and tailored to your needs. They strive to give you personalized one-on-one service, and they promise you will never have to sit through an automated system. Call them today or free to utilize any of their interactive tools offered about their website. Joella looks forward to working with you. You can get in contact with her at 972-303-1745 or jbenson@tsmlending.com. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up to Joella. Hey, Joella, how are you?
Good. How are you guys? Can you hear me?
Yep. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Cheers. Yeah, Joella, what got you into the mortgage industry? Do you remember what year you got in?
I got in it was September of 2001, actually. So very memorable month because it was, 9/11.
Yeah, 10 days
so
after.
a couple days before 9/11 is when I got into it. And I got into it because actually at the time my mom was a real estate agent and she needed a little bit of help with real estate. So I was actually a realtor for like 10 minutes and helped her with her real estate side. And then I decided that I liked the mortgage better and decided to go into that instead.
Nice. Do you remember how you got your first client?
I do. I remember my mom gave me obviously the referral, right? And I remember taking the application in person at the office, which is kind of funny because it's come back full circle. We used to, technology has obviously advanced. We take applications over the phone and we have a really cool app. But at the end of the day, we still take a lot of applications even today in person. I would say 50% of our applications are in person, which is kind of unusual for our industry. But because most of my business is local, I feel like the transaction goes better that way. So we do that.
Give them that peace of mind, and it's something about being belly to belly. It really is
for sure.
Connection.
For sure. I think shaking somebody's hand and getting them to see you, and I have a big team. My team comes in the office every day as well. So, I think there's like a different level of trust with the client. I mean, you are digging into so much of their, you're looking at what they're spending their money on, their bank statements. You're looking at their income. You're looking at the credit, even, from 7 years ago, the mistakes that people make on their credit. So it is a very personal thing. So, we think that allowing them or giving them the opportunity to come in and do it in person is a better way of doing business. Now, again, a lot of people don't do that, especially a younger crowd, the millennials and youngers. They like the app, and that's great. The app is super high tech. But there's some that still come in and like to shake hands and kiss babies.
No, of course. And Joel, what was it like going through 08, 09 for you, and like from 08 to 010? What was that like for you?
I'll tell you this. Everyone asked me when my business took off, and I would tell you it was about 08 and 09 for a couple of reasons. My demographic was, and probably primarily still is, but obviously as time goes by, your demographics change. You get older, you start getting repeat clients or whatever. But my demographic at the time was first-time home buyers, primarily Hispanic first-time home buyers. And we all know that the outside forces, the economy, the rates, things like that don't really affect that first-time home buyer, especially Hispanic first-time home buyer, as much. That they're going to keep buying. Like if you don't have a house, it doesn't matter. If there's foreclosures out there, if the rates are good, if the rates are bad. If you don't have a home and you want to buy a home, you're going to buy a home regardless of the outside forces. So I feel like that's just kind of when I felt like, okay, let's get it. And like I said, there's still a lot of my clientele out there needing a home. And that's kind of where my business took off. Town Square, we actually opened Town Square February 2009. And obviously it was everybody thought we were nuts for opening a mortgage company in the middle of the mortgage crisis. But it worked out really, really well. This one of those things that I tell agents and realtors, realtors and loan officers all the time, they always ask me, well, what do you think the rates are going to do? And what do you think housing's going to do? Do you think prices are going to go up or prices are going to go down? And I don't really have a problem predicting what I think is going to happen. I mean, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but at the end of that answer is always like, but it doesn't matter what the market does and what the industry does. What matters is what you're going to do during those times that's going to set you aside and be able to, whether you're going to grow and you're going to be able to kind of go with the flow and adjust to the changes, or if you're just not going to do any of those things.
I'm completely right. Yeah, adapting, being a chameleon is definitely one of the necessities during times.
For sure, especially nowadays, everything's moving so fast right now. Yeah, I remember the days where people had a Facebook and stuff, but it wasn't a way of marketing, and now it's social media, podcasts, things like that are just huge. And when I started, none of that was it was postcards, and ads in the paper and that kind of thing. So you just have to really know what the next thing is and be able to, like I said, turn the ship and be open to that change. AI is the next big thing, and we're using AI as much as possible. We're trying really hard to have our team here integrate a lot of AI into what we do. But, we'll see what happens. We're ready to go with the flow and see what the next turn is.
Ah, good for you. Good for you. Yeah, you're totally right. But like being omnipresent, like there's always different ways to do it. And right now, social media is one of the biggest way of I always see you online when you're just retargeting them. That's you're totally right on that.
For sure, for sure. And there's a lot of successful agents that are not online, but I would say the majority of, I personally think, okay, if I want, a new hairdresser, what am I going to do? I'm going to go on Instagram and look, if I need, whatever it is that I'm, we're doing some flowers for our agents next week for Valentine's Day, right? So we want to give them a little bouquet or whatever. So where did I go find it? I found it on Instagram. So if I know that I'm using this tool, and I'm older than most, I'm 45, so I'm not, so I know kids in their 20s, 30s, are looking at it if that's the way I'm finding my services. So because I know that's how I'm looking for it, I know that's where to be to get the attention and do the marketing. And it actually does work very, very well.
Yeah, but we have the right strategy. You got the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel.
For sure.
You're totally right on that. And what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about you, your industry, or your work?
I think the most misunderstood part of it is how much work it actually goes. I have a lot of realtors, and we joke around here when we say the realtor says push the button. And what that means is push the button, make it happen, and we wish we had the button to push, but there is so much regulation and so much paperwork and so much, even sometimes I think technology does ultimately try to make things smoother, but can often make it not, make it harder. And, there isn't that button that we can just say, okay, there's so, like I said, not just the guidelines and the loans but the regulatory things that we have to go and navigate around. And sometimes, let's say you have, not to get too technical here, but, you have an APR issue. The government limits us on how much you can charge to this person, and sometimes the seller has to pay it, and you have to jump through all these hoops and write amendments and do all these things to make it happen. And we're very lucky, I feel like, because we know how to do that. I know I've had files transferred that could have been done. They just didn't know how to move the numbers around to make it compliant. But I think that is the most misunderstood part of it, is I feel like a lot of people think it's just, getting data and passing the data on and moving it along, and there's just always so many things, so much more to it, that you have to look at.
No, 1,000%, Joel. You think you have a clean package, you send it to underwriting, and next thing you know, they give you 10 to 10 things off a checklist. You're
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And sometimes, the slightest little thing, the person says, yeah, I've been there for 2 years, but actually they've been there for 2 years and 11 months. And even though it sounds like the same thing, it's really not. And now we have to go back and get additional documentation, additional verification. It's little things, right? But little things add up. And I feel like that's the most misunderstood part, is that a loan officer kind of has to do two jobs. a real, just like a realtor, you have to be a good salesperson to sell yourself. And then you have to be a good negotiator, and you have to understand the paperwork and all of that. I think the loan officers the same way. We have to market ourselves to the realtors. I always tell my loan officers, look, guys, those realtors, when they hand you a lead, they're handing you the potential paycheck. So they have to trust you that you're going to turn that name and number of that person that they're sending you into a payday. And they have to know that you know what you're doing and that you care enough about the job and and the timeline, and that you care enough about it so that you can ultimately help them get that payday. And so the loan officer isn't just the marketing person. They're also a lot of guidelines and regulations and I think experience. And then not a shot at any new loan officers. We have a lot of new ones, but I always feel like somebody new has to be teamed up with a really experienced person, because you run into the craziest things sometimes, and you have to know how to get around it, or what the workaround or the fix is. And so it really is two jobs that we're doing. I feel like most sales jobs are sales jobs, right? If you're a pharmaceutical salesperson, you're out there selling. If you're a car salesman, you're out there selling. Whatever it is, you're selling. But our job requires the back end part. And I feel like most people are wired for one or the other. Typically, if you're an outgoing person and you are social and you like to be around people, you're not good at sitting behind a computer and figuring out the details. And if you are good at sitting behind a computer, looking at reading through guidelines and figuring out the details, you're not the other. So it really takes, a person that I'm definitely more the salesperson than I am the detail person, but I've learned through the years to be the detail person. And I feel like it's a hard combination to find. Or if you find one that is good at one side or the other, you have to teach them the other side for them to be actually successful loan officers.
No, you're totally right. You truly have to be fully rounded
Yeah.
in this particular role. And
For sure.
do you think there's any other misconceptions in regards to real estate in today's world?
I do think that a lot of people think it's easier than it is. Obviously, even on the real estate side of the world, I see a lot of realtors that get their license and they think it's an easy paycheck and it's an easy, I always say this: realtors and loan officers, the good ones, make more money than lawyers and doctors and people that have spent, engineers. So if you're going to make that money, you have to be that good. And just like in real estate, only a very small percentage of loan officers do the brunt of the business. I think that goes for all sales jobs, if I'm correct. But I think it is because it is harder. I've had so many loan officers that, come and go. I've had some good ones that, decided to, stick around and work it out and be great. But I always, 100% of the time, no matter if they make it and they become great loan officers, if they make it and just be, they're average loan officers, or if they don't make it, every single one of those three categories, thought it was going to be easier than it actually is.
No, you're totally right on that. It's in this industry, it's easier said than like people just post on social media like it's a highlight reel, and you really don't realize how much work goes into all of that. That list could have been made like 6 months ago. And you are right. The 80-20 rule, 20% do make 80% of the business in almost all sales industries. And if you could change anything about the industry, what would it be and why?
If I could change anything about the industry, I would honestly, I do believe in regulation. Obviously, there's got to be regulation for consumer protection, right? I do believe that. But I feel like it's so highly regulated that it actually ends up hurting the consumer. It costs more money for us, which we end up passing it on, and it makes it harder for us. So it gives them less choices. When we disclose how long we have to do certain things, what we can say and not say to a client. We're, as a licensed RMLO, you're not allowed to disclose an interest rate unless you disclose an APR. So if I'm driving in the car and a client calls me and says, "What's my interest rate going to be?" and I remember that I just locked their rate at whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I can't tell them, because I don't know what the APR is, right? So there's just so many little things I could go on all day about regulatory issues that actually make it hard. Again, I'm not against regulation. We do want to protect the consumer. But I feel like there's so much, and it's really hard too, I think, on our end, And I usually side with realtors because I know what they go through, and I know, the difficulty in being a realtor, and a lot of people think it's glamour and they see all the, selling sunsets and they think it's going to be that, but there's a lot more to it. Right. But right now I'm going to kind of separate myself from them because I feel like real estate is not nearly as regulated as we are. And they sometimes have a hard time understanding some of the frankly kind of dumb rules that we have to abide by. And that's a hard conversation to have when you're, at the end of a transaction and the property didn't appraise, and the seller's paying this much, but now they can't pay this much because it's over on these fees and you got to turn it around. And it's just hard that we're so highly regulated. I think that I would change that to a happy medium. Again, I'm not saying no regulation. I'm saying a common sense amount of regulation that doesn't end up hurting the quality of how we are able to do our work and the result that the consumer gets.
No, you're totally right. You're totally right. Have you ever pulled someone's credit report and then they get called like 20, 30 times from trigger leads by chance?
That is one of the other things I would change. I believe that I heard that it was going through Congress. Those are called trigger leads. So what happens is the bureaus, you pull a credit report, the bureaus sell to all these online marketing companies that, hey, so-and-so's had their mortgage credit pulled, so they're looking for a mortgage. And so then they get called by everybody, which is, I think, not just a little shady, but I also feel like it's really disruptive to the client. It's really, funny story, I pulled my credit. It had nothing to do with the mortgage, but I pulled my credit for some reason. But obviously I pulled my credit through our system. So it was a mortgage inquiry and I forgot to opt out myself. So I literally had, I'm not exaggerating, probably 70 people called me, and some people were texting me like, hey, I can offer you a higher interest rate. And I was like, or excuse me, I can offer you a better deal. I can offer you a lower interest rate. I'm like, how do you even know what interest rate I'm getting? I would get into arguments with some of these people because they were just such hardcore salespeople, and they actually had no idea that I wasn't even looking for a mortgage, but they were just selling nothing. And yeah, I feel like it's very infuriating for those of us who spend a lot of time working on these files, and these clients are saying, well, so-and-so says they can get me this. I'm like, they haven't seen your credit. They haven't seen your income. They don't know anything about your file. They're selling you air. So it makes it very hard on us, again, to do quality work when we're constantly having to dispel lies or, half truths that they're hearing from salespeople that got their name and number off some, trigger lead list. Hopefully that gets passed and that gets banned, because it should absolutely be illegal.
No, seriously. I don't think trigger leads benefits nobody.
Absolutely nobody. Absolutely nobody.
For the greater good. And perhaps the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau gets revamped too in these next upcoming years. And you don't have to answer this question, Joella, but like, how do you handle criticism or negative feedback about your work if it's ever occurred?
I'm sorry. I had somebody next door is being really loud. Tell me, I didn't hear your question.
You don't have to answer this, but like, how do you handle criticism or negative feedback about your work if it's ever occurred?
At the end of the day, you have to be able to take some, right? Because that's the only way to get better. And like I said, I have a big team. I have a lot of assistants and 2 other LOs. They kind of do their own loans, but we're still team up for the number of assistants and stuff. So you have to listen to it. And you have to be able to recognize what is true and what isn't. I'll be the first one to say that we are busy. We close a lot of files. So if you call me, I just missed like 3 calls in the time we're on the phone, right? So people will say, hey, Joella doesn't answer the phone. I don't, but I do return every single call back. So you have to be able to take that criticism and say, okay, is this something that I can actually fix it? Or is it just this person is being irrational or maybe doesn't understand my end? You have to be able to look at it objectively and not emotionally, because that's really the only way to get better. And I can tell you that when I started in the business, I worked under my boss at the time was Jeff. Now he's my partner, but I was very young, and he would tell me, oh my gosh, you have to call people back. And I would dread telling anybody bad news, like you don't qualify, or the appraisal came in low, or we need a little extra time because you just switched jobs and you didn't tell me about it or whatever. I dreaded whether it was my fault or not. Usually it isn't, but sometimes it is. Having that call, and then there's times where it's everyone makes mistakes. The processor can make a mistake, the underwriter, the appraiser, the title company. I had a really hard time at the beginning of my career calling people with bad news. And he would tell me, the day that you learn to have these tough conversations and explain them, you're able to articulate what the issue is, how you're going to solve it, and how long it's going to take, and how it's going to affect them, and hopefully it won't be a big effect, then you're going to be so good at what you do. And he was absolutely right. The day that I heard that criticism, because I heard it a lot of times, but the day that I actually heard it and didn't, have an emotional reaction to it and thought about it and said, all right, I'm going to start taking these calls. It's funny now, because now my loan officers, when they have bad news to tell, they're like, hey, can you call my listing agent and let them know? I'm the one that does it because I enjoy it. I feel like at the end of the day, telling somebody bad news the correct way, you're not going to just say, hey, we have a problem, bye. You're going to tell them, hey, here's the problem. Here is what caused it. Here is the solution. Here's how long it's going to take. And here's how it's going to affect you or not affect you. I wanted you to know. And that is honestly a really good marketing tool. I feel like I've picked up other agents that I've worked with by calling them and giving them bad news in the correct way, in an honest way, and in a very, what's the word I'm looking for? In a way that makes them feel like you're competent, right? Then you end up picking up business. Right. Like they know, okay, well, something happened, but these people know how to fix it. I've picked up over the years a lot of business. So I do think that criticism has to, like I said, you can hear it and you can get mad about it and walk away, or you can blow it off and walk away. But when you actually hear it and take it in and are able to convert it into growth and, self-improvement, then that could really, take you in a way better direction. So you have to take it. You have to. And now, like I said, there's times where people just criticize, she didn't answer the phone. Well, it's 9:30 on a Saturday. You know what I mean? Okay. You can be mad about that. I'll call you Sunday morning. And I do, but you have to, in any sales job, because you're selling yourself, especially in a service sales job, right? We're not selling a product, really. We're not selling the loan. We're selling our ability to do your loan and give you all the options and give you the best option. And you're selling yourself to these realtors. Hey, I'm going to close your deals. I'm going to find a way. If there's a way, I'm going to teach the buyer and tell them what they need to do so that if they can't buy right now, they can buy in 6 months or a year or whatever. And you have to sell that your ability to do that. You have to be able to take criticism. And I said it's harder. The younger you are, the harder it is. And the less experienced you are, the harder it is. But I think the more you're able to do it, the better you'll end up being.
No, 1,000%. I love your formula. Like, here's the problem. This is how long it's going to take. Here are your solutions. How would you like to proceed? Like, I truly thank you for teaching me that today, Joella. I greatly appreciate that.
We call it the sandwich. We call it the sandwich, right? When you call somebody, we got to tell them bad news or good news, bad news, good news. So the good news is the loan is approved. The bad news is the property didn't appraise. The good news is that we're disputing the appraisal and we can probably still close on time. You got to sandwich it so that, that person feels like there's some good in with the bad, and that you have a solution. You don't just hang up unless you've told them the solution and they feel good about it.
Yeah, you give them hope. You give them optimism.
Yeah.
And what's the story behind your most memorable success or failure, would you say?
I'll start with a failure. I think that, and this isn't so much as a loan officer, but as a branch manager, as a company owner, there's been times where I feel like I've put a lot of work and love and energy and time that, sometimes belong to my kids or my family or to myself, into helping people that didn't really appreciate that or didn't really recognize that, and that's more of an emotional thing, I guess, than a business thing. It's going to happen in every business. You're going to hire people, you're going to train them, you're going to give them your all, and they're going to not like you and say, oh, you didn't call me back that one time, or, you talked to so-and-so and I didn't like them or whatever, but I think that it took me a very long time to understand that not everybody's a good fit for this. And so I feel like I failed because I spent a lot of time. I spun my wheels for a very long time, trying to make people that, like I said, you have to have a certain personality and you have to have a certain amount of drive to be able to do this job. And I felt like everybody can be a loan officer. Let's all do it. And so that's not the case. And over time, I've learned to recognize who can and can't do it and where I should spend my time. As I get older, obviously, I don't want to spend 18 hours in the office, as I have often done over the last 20 something years. So I feel like but it was a good failure because I've learned and I'm not there anymore. I feel like I can, like I said, really recognize who will work. And I may miss one here and there, but I know that not everybody deserves that time and energy. And as far as, what was it? The other side, you said failure and I'll tell you about accomplishment. I tell this story all the time. I love this story. I think it's on my Instagram page, but, when I started in the business, the first year I was in the business, I was very young. I was 22. I was pregnant. I had a couple that came in and they had 4 boys and she was pregnant with a girl. And we were both due the same day. He made $12 an hour and she made $9 an hour, work part-time because she was pregnant. And they qualified for like a $78,000 house. This is in 2001. There was actually $78,000 houses back then. So that's all they could afford. That's what they bought. 3 or 4 years later, they came back. They had a bunch of kids. They had 5 kids, obviously, after she had the girl. And her and I just kind of remained friends because we had babies at the same time. And so she would Instagram me or she's like I always call her my biggest Facebook fan because she always likes my stuff. And we just kind of kept in touch that way. About 3 or 4 years into that, they decided to sell that house and buy another one. So they made money on it because obviously if it appraised for more. So they made, $50,000-$60,000. They bought another house. A couple of years later, they bought another house. A couple of years later, one of the sons turned 18. He bought a house. And they just kept doing that over and over and over again. And in 2023, she actually moved back to Mexico with her mom. He's still working here, but they own about probably 11 or 12 properties. And we looked at just the equity that they had. There are over $2 million in equity in homes. And if you look at it, I always say, how else could you make $12 an hour in 2021 and be a millionaire in 2023 or 2001 and 2021? So it was 12 years. I tell that story all the time. They own a bunch of properties. They have rental income. So she was able to, her mom got sick. She was able to move back to Mexico for like 6 or 7 months. She stopped working. They're living off the rents. He's still here, kind of going back and forth. But I love that story. My favorite people, their sons have properties. They have the older ones are, over 20 now and they're working. So a couple of those kids have a property and a rental property. And so that it makes me happy, it makes me happy to be able to tell that story because I don't think they set out to do that. I think they set out to buy a house and then they realized what it could do and they just kept going. And, I just love that story. I'll tell it every time someone asks.
No, that story is super powerful, I would say. Like it speaks volumes. Even I get little goosebumps just from hearing that. Like who would have thought like a part-time job of $10, $15 can get you a millionaire in a decade with real estate. So keep sharing that. And in 2025, like who inspires or influences you the most in your work?
In 25 or 24?
2025 this year now.
This year. Who inspired me? That's a tough one. We're very early into the year. I do have a new loan officer. He's pretty new. He started last year and, I told him, don't quit your job, have both, learn the ropes, get some business. He didn't listen. He quit his job. He did okay last year, but I was really inspired at the beginning of the year. He wrote me this long text and he was like, look, I know you told me not to do that. I didn't do as well as I thought I was going to do, but I still, paid the bills and I'm ready to do it this year. And, had all these ideas and all these things. And it inspired me because I felt like he had been watching some of the stuff that I do and he was ready to go for it. And it just, I'm a self-motivating person, but I love people that are as well. And I just thought that he was so motivated and ready to go in spite, not meeting his goals last year. He was ready to go this year. So I was very motivated by his text message early in the year.
Wow, you truly have a giver's game mentality. You're paying it. you're paying it forward, I would say.
Thanks.
No, of course, of course. So, switching gears a little bit, like if you could eat dinner with any historical figure, like who would
Yeah,
it
that was. I haven't been asked that before. I'm gonna skip that one because I can't pick one. There's probably like 8.
be? Yeah.
So
All right.
I'm
You
definitely
named
skipping that one for now.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. And then yeah, so like hypothetically, like if you had another loan officer join you this year, like
Uh-huh.
what would be your advice to them to, hey, in like 2 to 3 months, this is how you can close a deal. Is that
I would
possible?
tell him, I would definitely tell him or her like my process, right? This is what I do. This is what works. But I feel like a lot of people, especially the people that have, there's a lot of loan officers that were, killing it 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, and they're not anymore. And I feel like the reason why they're not anymore, and some of them rightfully so, sometimes you're just tired and you're like, hey, I don't need to do 30 loans. I can do 5 and still do okay. And that's respectable because, people want to spend more time with their kids. And, I hired one loan officer probably, it's been a while now, but when she came on board, she said, listen, my daughter's in high school. This is her senior year, we're about to go into her senior year. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do 1 or 2 loans a month just to keep up with it because I want to spend time because she's going to go off to college. And once her daughter graduated, went off to college, she kicked it into gear and she's doing really well. I've always respected that mentality that, hey, family first or whatever first, I'm just going to make enough to get by and then I'll really, really do it. And I think I'm all or nothing. I'm like push it to the metal or, all the way down or nothing. So it took me a long time to understand that people can be different and to respect that part of it. So I would first sit down and say, okay, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to be the best loan officer in the world? Or do you want to do this many loans a month and just kind of have a good life, travel, whatever. And once I understood that, I would give them my formula, but I would also let them know, look, my formula doesn't work for everybody, right? Because I have certain things about me and my personality and having the experience that I have in the team that maybe you can't copy exactly, but also make sure that they understand the same thing that I said earlier is that you have to go with the flow. You cannot be set in your ways and say, this worked for me in 2011 because it is not 2011. The technology is completely different. Where we get our information is completely different. How we get our information is completely different. How referrals come about is completely different. You have to be able to just be a chameleon and go with the flow and learn what's going on and be open to changing. I feel like I said, a lot of people that I knew that had, they were doing really, really well. They just kept doing the same thing. And they're like, it's not working anymore. The market's bad. Or, people just aren't buying houses anymore. And I'm like, no, they are. You're just not changing with the times to still attract the people that you were able to attract through your methods before. So that's, I think, the number one thing is it's there isn't really a formula is the formula.
No, but you do know, like, whether it be one of your work or someone working under you or a client, you'd like to reverse engineer them or what their
Right.
goal or objective is and setting the proper expectations. So
Correct.
you are super self-aware, I would say. And
My husband would beg to differ, but that's a different podcast.
all right. The story for another day. What do you think is the key to maintaining a work-life balance, and how do you apply it in your life?
I'll tell you this, I probably am not the best person to answer this question. I'll answer it anyway, but I'm not the best because I feel very strongly that I haven't been the best at balancing. I have 3 kids, I made all their basketball games and all the volleyball games and all that, but I did work probably way too much. But I have also come to terms with that's just my personality. I'm just not, like I said, if you ask me to do something, I'm going to do it. And I don't want to be like, okay at it. So I do feel like, and like I said earlier, I admire the people that understand that there should be a work-life balance and they want to have that work-life balance. But again, you've got to look at your goals. I said this to a loan officer that didn't like it very much not too long ago, where he said, I don't want to sacrifice this or that, certain things. And I said, well, if you want to do this, if you want to do, 10 million a month, which is a, pretty good goal to have, right?
Yeah.
you're going to have sacrifice work after 5 p.m. You're going to have to take calls after that and on Saturdays and Sundays. If you want to be a $10 million a month loan officer, you have to, your kids, you're going to have to be watching a basketball game and have to step out for a minute to take a phone call and come back in. You're going to have to sacrifice certain things. It's my opinion. I just been in it and I know the people that are, how much business they're doing and what they have to do to get there. So as far as how you balance is first you have to understand what the expectations are and if they're realistic or not, because I don't think that people have realistic expectations of what they want to achieve, but what it takes to get there. And like I said, I really, really admire people. I have a loan officer that has like 6 adopted children, and obviously the world needs more of her, because that is, my heart goes out to her and to people that are, that do things like that for humanity. I love that. But she's very limited on what she can do work-wise, right? She's got some of them are disabled and this and that. And so she's very aware of her capacity and limitations. And I think having the right work-life balance requires you to be realistic about how that works. And a lot of people aren't.
No, you're totally right. No, oh yeah, everyone's different, like you said. Like everyone has different priorities.
Right.
And what would you say is the most challenging aspect of being in your role, essentially?
As a loan officer or as a man, like
As a manager.
I have a lot of. As a manager, I feel like because I am a loan officer as well, I do loans and I manage loan officers. I think that I know what it feels like to have that panic where you feel like if this loan doesn't close, it's the end of my career. And you do feel that way. You feel like that realtor's never going to send me business. Nobody from that real estate office isn't going to send me business. You feel like and you believe it at that moment, right? And I can tell you 20 something years into it, even to this day, if I was in a situation where I had to close a loan right now and something happened, like something got caught at the end or something, and it does happen, obviously, you do feel like it's the end. When it's not your loan and you're looking at it from the outside perspective, it's not the end of the world. So it's always hard for me to be I think I'm good at being in the middle of it because I can sympathize with the other person. I'm not just an operational employee that's like, oh, it's fine, we'll close it tomorrow. But it is hard to mediate the two sides when especially when you know how that loan officer feels and say, hey, listen, dude, we're going to do everything that we can, but I promise no one's going to die if this closes at 9:00 tomorrow versus at 3:00 this afternoon, because the wire didn't get there or whatever, that last funding condition didn't clear, whatever it is. That I think is the hardest part. And honestly, as a manager, and I know this sounds a little cheesy and, kind of mystical, but I do believe in energy and the energy you put out and the energy you sometimes somebody walks into your room and before they even say a word, you like them or you don't like them. I feel like that's an energetic type thing, right? Sometimes you bond immediately with somebody. I think that's an energy. It's all about energy. And I feel like what happens in my role a lot is that people that my loan officers are like, I always tell them, I'm like, okay, there's my children, my real children, and then them. I will go back to bat for them. I will take calls at midnight. I will, but a lot of times when they call me, they don't call me necessarily to tell me, oh, everything was great. Because I know everything was great. I'm seeing what's going on. They call me with a complaint. They call me with, oh my God, they didn't call me back. And so a lot of that I feel pulls my negative because it's complaining. And I have to hear it and I want to hear it. And I want them to feel like I am that outlet for them to complain to. And I'm going to try to side with them and try to come make them feel better. But a lot of times it's hard when you have 3 or 4 things or 3 or 4 people calling you about negative things. Your energy is drained, and I want to have more always a positive energy, as I walk around the world, and that can be hard sometimes when you're the complaint department. But I also take it as an opportunity to, help them, bring that back, whatever that experience is that's negative, back to something positive and something to learn from, and to something to, don't step on that stone again. Don't make the same mistake again.
No, no, you're truly pragmatic. You're a winner. You don't want excuses. You just want results.
Yeah, don't tell me the backstory. What's the problem? And let's fix it. And then we'll talk about it again when you're not emotional, and we'll say, we'll figure out how to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But it's that emotion that's hard to deal with. But I also understand it because I also live it as a loan officer.
No, of course, yeah. No, you're part of the proof is in the pudding, I would say. And what's your favorite book, podcast, or article that you think has helped you in the real estate realm?
I have bought probably 40 copies of this book because it's such a tiny little book, and it's such a great book to read as when you're in sales, especially for, it's funny because you would think that I'm giving this book to my production staff, right? LOs. And I have given it to a lot of LOs. I think it's the basics, the one-on-one of like being a salesperson. But I've also given it to a lot of operations people, because people in operations by nature are, they're hermits. They're behind their computer and they're good at that. And that's what we want them to do. But we also, there's a forward facing to that. There, I always tell my operations, my closing department, my processors, underwriters, we are your client. Our client is the buyer and the realtor, but we are your client. So you still have to, treat us like your client. But the book is called How to Make Friends and Influence People. Or how to win friends and influence in people. It's a real, you could read it in a weekend. Dale Carnegie wrote it, I don't know, 1920s. Harvard studies, like thousands of hours of studies on just the basics on how to, listen before you speak, and how to try to, if you want to, let's say you, as a loan officer, you meet a realtor and you're like, wow, this realtor is really good. I want to work with this person. How to really not just pretend you like them so they send you the business, but how to learn to like that person and genuinely care for them and their business. And it's just a really, really, really good book. And it's funny because it was written so long ago, and so many books and so many other studies have come out afterwards that just absolutely support that book and the information that it has in it about, even cues, when you speak to somebody, you point your finger towards, you point your feet towards the person, and it's a nonverbal cue that, believe it or not, they're picking up on. They're not conscious of it, but little things like that help you kind of, especially if you're that super nervous loan officer that is like going to make that sales call, and I feel like you're armed with all this information that is really, really valid and really, really true. And like I said, been supported for years after it was written. So that would be the number one book that I would recommend to anybody, whether you're a salesperson or not, right? Because having good relationships is good no matter what, right? And so it's been great. I read it probably once a year, and I can tell you that probably once a week I find myself in a situation where I'm like, ooh, that was in the book. So I really like it.
Well, even after doing 10,000 hours honing your craft, you're still putting in the work. I love it.
Yeah, it's a craft that changes. It's just like anything else. I can't think of anything in this world that doesn't change. If you're a doctor, the new technology, you got to learn it. There's new medications, new machines, new things. If you're a lawyer, laws change, politics change. So no matter what you do, I read the book, The Outliers, where the 10,000 hours that you were referring to, and how people that put 10,000 hours into a business are the outliers in the industries, and they tend to do better, and whatever. But I feel like that I enjoyed that book, but I also feel like that is not necessarily completely accurate, because you got to put the 10,000 hours to be the expert. But if you put the 10,000 hours until, let's say, 2010, you got to put new 10,000 hours, because now there's a whole new world. Technology has never moved this fast, and it is outpacing our ability to keep up with it. So you have to really be aware of that.
No, you're totally right. And going back to the book, like you really try to get the understanding of like a human psychology and rapport. Like there's some salespeople that they build rapport in the beginning, and then like when they ask for the sale, like there's not really much rapport. But I feel like you just by the time you get funded, you become friends with your client almost.
Right.
Where they really do have that. You really do like a connection or bond, and it's like a lifetime thing almost.
Yeah. No, definitely. That book is very, very insightful. I mean, it's funny because there's principles, and they did this. They studied all this. Nothing is pulled from anywhere else. They actually did studies. I don't know, it was maybe Yale, Harvard, one of those schools, either Harvard or Yale, where they studied how people interacted and all that. But what's cool about it is there's biblical principles in there. There's all kinds of things that they ended up proving to be true, not pulling it from outside of there. And like I said, there's a podcast. It's called I think it's called Mind of a CEO or something. And they talk about, how to, there's a lot about that book in there, but they never mention the book. But I'm like, everything they're talking about kind of pertains back to the book and how to do certain things and learn certain things and pick up on what people are looking at, or which direction they're looking at. Are they looking in your eyes, not looking in your eyes, what you're doing, how you're reacting, how you listen, letting them finish, all these things that you learn to really be an effective communicator, which is how you become a good salesperson. At the end of the day, if you're not good at communicating and expressing yourself and articulating what you're trying to say, you cannot sell anything, much less yourself, right? Because when we are realtors and loan officers, we are selling ourselves, our service.
No, 1,000%. And if you understand like the psychology of how they like to buy and you cater to them that way, like you definitely you get a lot farther when you understand like how someone likes to buy or how they make decisions. Because like you said, everyone's different almost. So you kind of have to know like your audience or who you're talking to
for sure.
Moment. And is there any other piece of advice you wish you had received early in your career?
You cut out with who? That I would share with who?
Is there a piece of advice you wish you would have received early in your career that could have changed your whole trajectory?
Oh, that I wish I would have received. No, I mean, yes, probably a lot. But the thing is that we listen when we're ready to listen, right? So I'm pretty sure that the people that came before me, my mentors, the people that were, doing this for 10, 15 years when I started, probably told me a lot of the stuff, but, just like kids, you tell them a million times until they listen. And I feel like I'm sure that all of the advice was given to me. I feel like it's just, there comes a time in your career, maybe your life, maybe your maturity, maybe your frontal lobe matures at some point or something, I don't know, or something pivotal happens that, it hurts so bad, or it caused so much, maybe a relationship damage or reputational damage or whatever, that you actually said, okay, I'm going to listen and I'm going to change. But I feel like a lot of the advice that I was given early on, it's just like you always say, with your mom, my mom told me this my whole life. And then now I'm like, oh, now I get why she told me that. But there's something about our brains, that we don't listen until until we listen, and I don't know, like I said, maybe you have to be slapped with it. Maybe you have to be just mature enough. I'm not sure. But I do feel like I was probably given, and I like to read. I will go down rabbit holes for hours and do research. But again, you can read something and it can sound really good, and you're like, oh, that sounds amazing. But it doesn't mean that you can put it into action or actually absorb it into how you do things until you have to. So, I sometimes I want to, all the things I say to I have two daughters. I have a son too, but my two daughters, they don't listen to their mom. And I want to write it all down so that one day when they come back, I can pull up the scroll and say, told you so. But it's not just parent relationship. It's just everything, we do in our adult lives, I feel like.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, we learn through trial and error. We learn through someone else's trial and error. It's funny how like someone just wants to, they just want to experience it just to confirm what you're saying isn't a lie. And they're like, right. Oh yeah, they did tell me that. Yeah. And when it's all said and done, Joella, like what legacy do you hope to leave behind through your work?
I feel like I really feel like for the last couple of years, first it was all about getting my feet wet, learning how to do this, making money. Honestly, at first it was about making money, then it kind of became more about excelling, like being better, being at the top tier, not just making money, but like really being good at what you do, having all the programs, learning, how to get around, being very resourceful and all that. And I feel like now it's more about really being able to do this at a high level, but still have fun with it, still enjoy it, not regret the hours that you put in the office, because you surround yourself with people that, you enjoy working with, and you thrive from seeing them thrive as well. And that's not just my team, who I have, like I said, I have a great team. 2 of them are my cousins. And so I've, they started with 0 experience, and they're done great over the last 6 years and getting better every day. But also, like, the realtors that I work with, I've learned that I'm not going to work with somebody that I don't genuinely like. So the job just gets done better, and everything is easier when you like the people that you work with. And I feel like my legacy will be that, hey, you can put a ridiculous amount of hours into something and make a very good living, and still enjoy that part of it. Not just going to work like, oh my God, I have to go. No, but get up excited about it. And it is possible. And I think that for a very long time, I didn't take that route. It was more like, I got to get up because I got to go, because I got to close the deal, because I got to make money, because I got to be the best, because I got to be a top loan officer. Now it's more like, I want to get up. I want to go do it because, I want this person to succeed, or I want my team to grow, and I want to do it. That's also my why. People ask me, what's your why? And I'm like, my why is not having to do it. It's not a requirement anymore. I could retire if I wanted to. So I'm here because I want to, not because I have to. And learning that. And again, I don't think that if I tell a 22-year-old this right now, that they would understand what I mean until they've toiled behind the desk for 10 years and been stressed and frustrated. And then they're like, oh, yeah, maybe this would be easier if I was actually having fun and enjoying it, but it's a process like everything else. So I would say that would be what I would want others to learn, and hopefully learn very early on.
Not good for you, Joel. You're really at the point where you're just chasing magic or fulfillment. Like you're creating exceptional user experiences for everybody that you meet, that you come across in your life path or journey. And I got one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm old, I'm gonna rewatch this probably.
Okay.
So can you give me like a life message?
Really listen to old people. That sounds bad, but it's funny how the older you get, the more you're like, oh my God, my grandma told me this. Oh my God, and I do feel like, kind of in line with what we've been talking about, when your grandparents are gone, when, fortunately my parents are all still here, try really hard not to drown out those really, really, really good pieces of advice, and really take them to heart. Because I think if you learn, the earlier you learn that on in your life, and the earlier you pick up on that, and really, like I said, you can understand it. There's a difference between understanding something and really just believing it and absorbing it. The more you do that, the sooner you do that, the better you'll be, the happier you'll be, the more successful you'll be. The more you'll be able to, like you said, balance work and personal life and family and all that. And so I think it took me too long, but I don't regret it, obviously. But I can tell you that I've had a lot of people over the years tell me a lot of things that I wish I would have paid more attention to. I didn't blow any of them off. I just didn't, maybe put them into effect or really understand it.
Yeah, you just kept it in your back pocket, and then I'm telling you, sometimes we just want to see, we just want to live it on our, like, we want to see with our own eyes just to confirm.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell people, like, everyone says, I'll do it for my kids. I'm working for my kids. I'm doing it for my kids. And of course, we all love our children more than anything, and we want their success. And of course, I can tell you that I've done a lot, almost everything I've done for my kids. But there's also comes a point where you realize I'm also doing it for the people that came before me, that sacrificed for me, that raised me, that taught me, that, wanted me to do well. And even though a lot of them aren't here anymore, this is also for them, because they're the ones that poured into me so that I would become a successful, being or whatever. And that brings a new sense of purpose when you're not just doing it for your kids, who are probably going to be ungrateful for it for a very long time, right? Until they figure it out, and then they'll be grateful. But you know, I do it for them, but I also do it for the people that poured so much into me as a child. So
No,
change is your purpose.
No, you're totally right. It's all trials and tribulations. And Joella, thank you so much for sharing time out of your day with me. It truly means a lot. Do you want to share any other lessons, comments, questions, or thoughts?
No, I would just say, you know, I know this audience is very much, you know, real estate related, and I just would want everybody to, you know, kind of take that. The last note is, you know, don't worry about what the market is doing. Obviously, pay attention to it, right? But don't worry about whether the rates are going to go up or down. Don't worry about whether the housing is going to go up or down. Don't worry about, you know, any outside forces. Honestly, I've seen some of, you know, the stats came out the other day. In 2024 was the lowest existing home sales in almost 30 years, which blew my mind because I've seen so many people that had their best year in their entire career in 2024. So really, if you're going to do whatever, whether it's not real estate, whatever your chosen path of career path is, definitely you have to pay attention to what's going on, but that is not what's going to define how you're going to do. And I think that, you know, so many people are waiting for something to happen for them to act or react. And that's just not my way of doing it. You act, you're going to get a reaction of your actions. Don't wait for anything from outside to happen to make whatever it is that you want happen.
You're totally right. I commend you. Keep radiating your energy. Keep being legendary. And thank you, Joella.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
No, of course. More. Yeah, can't wait to have you on again. Can you stay on the call for 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard a queen from Texas, Joella Benson. Check her out. She will help you achieve your home dreams.